Imagine you are sitting at a low wooden table. In front of you is a simple bowl of white rice. The steam rises in thin, swirling ribbons, disappearing into the air before it even hits your face. You can feel the heat radiating from the ceramic. It is a quiet, steady warmth. You reach out your hand to pick up the bowl, but halfway there your fingers stop. They just hang there in the empty air. You want the warmth of that bowl. You can see it, you can almost feel the weight of it in your palm, but there is a strange, invisible wall between your skin and the ceramic. You feel a sudden, sharp urge to pull your hand back and hide it under the table. This is the tension we live with every day. We are like someone sitting in a cold room, staring at a warm bowl of rice, unable to touch it. Think about the last time someone tried to give you a hug, or brushed against your arm in a crowded hallway, or reached out to pat your back when you were sad. In that split second, did you lean into them, or did you stiffen? Did your muscles turn into stone for just a moment? Did you find yourself wondering what they wanted from you, or if you were supposed to move away? We live in a world that tells us we are islands. We are taught that our skin is a border, like a fence around a house. We think that being strong means being separate. We have been told that our space is our own, and that any time someone enters that space, it is a big deal. Because we think touch has to be a thing, a deliberate act with a label, we have forgotten how to let it just be the air we breathe. So we sit at the table and we look at the rice. We are hungry for the connection, but we are terrified of the contact. In Korea, there is a word for the thing we are missing, skinship. It isn't about sex. It isn't even always about deep, romantic love. It is about the casual, constant, nonverbal ways we remind each other that we are not alone. It is the way a grandmother rubs a child's stomach. It is the way friends sit so close their shoulders overlap like scales on a fish. It is the way people lean into each other without even thinking about it. In the West, we often treat touch like a transaction. I give you a hug, you give me a hug back, we trade. But in the world of skinship, touch is more like the steam rising from that bowl. It doesn't belong to just the rice, and it doesn't belong to just the air. It is the shared atmosphere between us. Right now, many of us are suffering from a kind of starvation we can't quite name. We have all the food we need, we have all the digital likes we can handle, but our skin is lonely. We have built these beautiful, high-tech lives where we never have to bump into anyone. We have our own cars, our own rooms, our own screens. We have successfully protected our personal space, but in doing so, we have built a cage. When you pull away from a touch, you aren't being mean, you aren't broken. You are just following the rules of a system that says you are a solitary grain of rice, kept separate in a dry jar. But a single grain of rice is hard and cold. It only becomes soft, it only becomes nourishing when it is cooked together with others, touching, sharing the same water, sharing the same heat. Look at your hand again, still hovering near that warm bowl. Notice the shaking. Notice the way your brain is trying to calculate the risk of just being close to something else. We have become experts at the distance. We have learned how to be perfectly safe and perfectly isolated at the same time. As we sit here at this table, we aren't going to talk about how to fix you. We are just going to look at the steam. We are going to look at why that invisible wall exists. We are going to ask why we have been taught to fear the very thing that keeps us warm. The rice is still steaming. The bowl is still there. The warmth hasn't gone anywhere. It is waiting for you to realize that the fence around your skin was never meant to be a prison. It was just a place where you haven't been touched in a long, long time. Look at the bowl of rice again. Notice the space between you and the ceramic. In the West, we call this space mine. It is the invisible bubble. To understand why you pull away, we have to look at the blueprints of the bubble. We have to see how we built it. In Western psychology, we treat the human person like a single, solitary grain of rice before it is cooked, before it is soft. We see it as a hard, distinct unit with clear edges. This grain has a name, it has rights, most importantly, it has a buffer zone. We are taught from the time we can crawl that our body is a sovereign nation. Every inch of skin is a border. We are the kings and queens of these tiny countries. If someone touches us without an invitation, it feels like a border crossing. It feels like an invasion. This is the system of autonomy. It is a system built on the idea that I am only me if I am separate from you. If our skin touches, the line between us gets blurry, and in a culture that prizes the individual above everything else, blurriness feels like death. It feels like losing yourself. Think about the geometry of a Western dinner. You have your plate, I have my plate. You have your fork, I have my fork. If your hand reaches toward my rice bowl, my brain sends an alarm, red alert, intrusion detected. Why? Because the rice is mine. The space around it is mine. Even the air my hand occupies is mine. We have spent centuries perfecting this physics of distance. We created personal space. It is an actual measurement. In North America and Northern Europe, we keep about 18 inches of intimate space that is reserved only for lovers or close family. Then there is personal space, which is about 4 feet, then social space. We carry these rulers in our heads. We are constantly measuring. We are constantly calculating. When someone steps from the 4-foot zone into the 18-inch zone, your nervous system doesn't see a friend. It sees a data point that is out of place. It sees a violation of the code. This is why you pull away. It is a reflex. Your brain is trying to protect your sovereignty. It is trying to keep the grain of rice from getting smashed into the other grains. But here is the cost of the system. When you define yourself by your distance from others, you become an island. Islands are safe. Islands are private. But islands are also lonely. In this system, touch becomes a high-stakes event. Because we have pushed everyone back to the 4-foot line, anyone who comes closer must have a very specific reason to be there. We have turned touch into a transaction. If I touch your shoulder, I am asking for something. I am signaling something. It is heavy. It is loaded with meaning. Because touch is so heavy, we avoid it to keep things light. We stop the skinship because we don't want to deal with the implications. We want to remain clean and independent. We want our rice bowl to be ours and ours alone. But look at the steam again. The steam doesn't care about your 18-inch rule. The heat from the bowl doesn't stop at the edge of the ceramic. It moves. It blends. It warms the air that you are breathing right now. In the West, we try to fight the steam. We try to fan it away so we can see the edges of the bowl clearly. We think that if we can just see the edges, we will be safe. But the more we fan the steam away, the colder the room gets, the harder the rice becomes. We have created a world where we are safe from each other, but we are freezing to death in our own autonomy. We crave the touch because our biology knows we are not meant to be hard grains of rice in a dry jar. Our biology knows we are meant to be cooked together. But our system, the mental software we were raised with, screams stranger danger, even when the person touching us is someone we love. Your pull-away reflex is not a flaw in your personality. It is the successful operation of your cultural training. You are a well-guarded fortress. Your borders are secure. No one is getting in. But as you sit there, staring at the steam, you might start to realize that the fortress is very quiet. The sovereign nation of me is a very small country. And the price of total independence is total isolation. We have analyzed the bubble. We see the walls. We see the rulers. Now we have to look at what happens when the walls aren't there. We have to look at the other way of being, the way where the rice and the steam and the hand are all part of the same warmth. Take a breath and look back at the bowl of rice. We have spent time looking at the walls we build, those invisible lines that keep us separate. But now I want you to imagine a different kind of kitchen. This isn't a kitchen of single plates and individual portions. This is a kitchen where the steam from one pot fills the entire house, and where the word for intimacy isn't a medical term or a romantic secret. It is a word that sounds like the friction of cloth against skin, skinship. If you look at the history of this word, you won't find it in an Old English dictionary. It is a word born in the East, a mix of the English word skin and the suffix of kinship. It was created to describe something that the West didn't have a specific name for. It describes the state of being so close to another person that your skin becomes the bridge of your relationship. In the civilization where this word grew, the rice bowl isn't just yours. In a traditional Korean home, the table was often small and the space was shared. You didn't have a giant fortress of a bedroom all to yourself. You slept on the floor on warm mats next to your siblings, your parents, or your grandparents. Your first memories of the world weren't of a cold crib in a dark room. They were of the rhythmic patting of a mother's hand on your chest as you fell asleep. This movement, this rhythmic kneading, is where the civilization begins. In the West, we are taught that to grow up is to move away. We move from the crib to the bed, from the bed to our own room, from our own room to our own house. We measure our success by how much distance we can put between ourselves and the people who raised us. But in the world of skinship, the goal isn't to become a solitary grain of rice. The goal is to remain part of the cluster. Think about the mother's hand kneading the child's stomach when they have a tummy ache. In Korea, she might say, "My hand is the pharmacy hand." She isn't just checking a temperature, she is using her skin to pull the child back into the collective warmth. She is saying without words that you are not an island, you are part of me. This creates a different kind of nervous system. If you grow up with your skin constantly touching the skin of those you love, the invisible bubble never has a chance to harden. You don't see a touch as an invasion because you never learned that you were supposed to be alone in the first place. You don't have to ask for a hug because you are already leaning against your friend's shoulder while you watch a movie. You don't have to negotiate space because the space belongs to everyone. This is what we call high context connection. In a low-context culture like much of the West, we need words for everything. We need to say, "I am feeling sad, could you hold me?" We need to label the moment, but in a high-context culture, the touch is the word. The way a friend links their arm through yours as you walk down the street is a whole paragraph of support. The way a father ruffles his son's hair while they sit in silence is a complete conversation about pride and belonging. When we look at the civilization layer, we see that the architecture of our homes and the architecture of our language are actually the architecture of our bodies. If you live in a world where the rice is shared from a middle pot, you learn that your survival depends on being close enough to reach it. You learn that warmth is a communal resource. Now connect this back to your frozen hand. The reason you pull away isn't because you are cold-hearted. It's because you were raised in a civilization that values the dry jar. You were taught that to be a good adult is to be a grain of rice that doesn't stick to the others. You were taught that sticky is a bad thing. But skinship is the art of being sticky. It is the recognition that we are biologically designed to be part of a cluster. Our brains have a specific pathway just for the kind of slow, gentle touch that skinship provides. When that pathway is activated, our heart rate slows down. Our cortisol levels, the stress chemicals, drop. Our body realizes it doesn't have to be on guard anymore because the herd is close. We are looking at two different ways of being human. One is a collection of beautiful, high-walled fortresses. The other is a steaming, messy, warm bowl where it's hard to tell where one person ends and the next begins. You have spent your life in the fortress, but the steam from the communal bowl is starting to drift over your walls. You are starting to realize that the kinship in skinship isn't about blood. It's about the skin remembering that it was never meant to be a border. It was meant to be a sensor for the warmth of others. As we move forward, we have to ask, what happens to a person who has the biology of a clustered dweller but the training of a fortress builder? What happens when the steaming rice is right there, but you have forgotten how to let yourself be sticky? Look at the rice again. The steam is thinner now. The bowl is beginning to cool. This is the moment where the hunger becomes painful. You want the warmth, but your hand is still frozen. You are a touch-starved sovereign. You are the ruler of a kingdom of one, and your borders are so secure that you are dying of thirst inside your own walls. We need to talk about why you pull away. We need to talk about the autonomy firewall. Think about what happens in your brain when someone reaches out to touch you. If you were raised in a world of individual grains of rice, your brain treats a touch like a hack. It's an unauthorized access attempt. Your nervous system has a built-in alarm system. It's designed to ask, what does this mean? What do they want? Am I safe? In the West, we have linked touch to power and sex. We have made it so that almost every touch has a price tag or a destination. If a hand touches your hand, your brain immediately starts running a simulation of the future. It's trying to figure out if this is an invitation, a demand, or a threat. This is exhausting. It takes a massive amount of mental energy to calculate the meaning of a hand on a shoulder. So your brain does something very logical. To save energy, it builds a firewall. It decides that the safest answer is always no. You pull away because your brain is trying to protect yourself. You feel that if you let someone in without a clear reason, you might lose your edges. You might stop being the king or queen of your little island. This is the paradox. Your biology is screaming for the oxytocin, the cuddle chemical that heals your heart. But your psychology is screaming that the touch is a threat to your independence. You are starving at a feast because you are afraid the food is poisoned. When you pull away, you are choosing safety over nourishment, but look at the cost. Every time you stiffen your muscles, every time you take a half step back, you are reinforcing the idea that you are alone. You are telling your body, we are in a survival situation, do not trust the warmth. This creates a loop. Because you don't get touched, your nervous system becomes hypersensitive. The less you are touched, the more loud and startling any touch becomes. A simple pat on the back feels like a lightning strike. Because it feels like a lightning strike, you pull away even faster. Because you pull away, you stay lonely, the rice gets colder, the jar gets drier. We have created a generation of people who are skin, hungry but touch phobic. You watch videos of people being kind. You watch movies where people lean into each other. You feel a lump in your throat. That lump is your biology mourning the loss of the cluster. But when you are actually in the room with another human, the firewall goes up. You aren't pulling away because you don't like people. You are pulling away because you have been trained to believe that your personal space is your soul. You think that if the bubble pops, you will disappear. But look at the grains of rice in the bowl. When they are cooked together, do they disappear? No. They become something better. They become a meal. They share the heat so that none of them has to stay hard and cold. The tragedy of the Western sovereign is that we think we are protecting our freedom, but we are actually just protecting our numbness. We have traded the messy, sticky warmth of skinship for the clean, cold safety of the dry jar. You are not weird for wanting to be held, and you are not broken for jumping when it happens. You are just caught between two different operating systems. Your body is running cluster 1, 0, but your culture has installed autonomy 2, 0. They are crashing into each other. The firewall is not you, it's just a program. And the program is failing because it was never designed to handle the reality that humans cannot survive on distance alone. You are holding your breath, waiting for the person next to you to move away so you can relax, but as soon as they move away, you feel the cold. You feel the silence. You look at the bowl of rice and you realize that sovereignty is just another word for empty. We have to understand that the pull-away reflex is a survival mechanism for a threat that doesn't exist. Your friend's hand is not a border crossing. Your partner's shoulder is not an invasion. It is just the steam. It is just the warmth trying to find a way back into your life. As you sit there, can you feel the places where your body is touching the chair? Can you feel the weight of your own hands in your lap? That is the beginning. That is the first crack in the firewall. You are realizing that you are still you, even when you are touching something else. The rice is cold now, but we are about to learn how to turn the heat back on. We are going to look at Jeong, the invisible glue that makes the grains stick together without anyone losing their soul. Take a moment to simply look at the bowl. Forget for a second about the rulers and the firewalls. Imagine that this bowl of rice has been sitting on a heater. Even if you aren't touching the rice, the air around the bowl is different than the air in the rest of the room. This is what we call Jeong. In Korea, Jeong is the invisible substance that connects people. It is the heat that lingers in the chair after a friend leaves. It is the weight of the blanket your mother tucked around your feet. It is the sticky glue that keeps the grains of rice together. Jeong isn't a feeling you have today and lose tomorrow. It isn't like liking someone or even falling in love. It is a shared history. It is a slow-cooked connection. If you have Jeong with someone, your skin knows it before your brain does. Think of a grandmother in a small village. She is preparing a meal for her grandson. She doesn't use a measuring cup. She doesn't follow a sterile recipe from a book. She uses her hands. She mixes the vegetables with her bare fingers. She tastes the soup from the same spoon she uses to stir. In the West, we might look at this and think about germs or boundaries. We might see a lack of hygiene. But in the world of Jeong, she is quite literally putting her life into the food. Her skinship with the ingredients is how she transfers her love into the child's body. When the child eats that rice, he isn't just eating carbohydrates, he is consuming the warmth of her hands. This is a system where the heart doesn't live inside your chest, it lives in the space between people. Imagine two people sitting on a park bench. In a world without Jeong, they are two separate boxes sitting next to each other. They are careful not to let their coats touch, they are polite. They are sovereign. But in a world of Jeong, those two people are like two puddles of water that have merged into one. There is no transaction. They don't need to talk about their feelings because their shoulders are already touching. That touch is a constant, quiet hum of I am here and you are here. It is the feeling of being held by the group even when you are just sitting still. Jeong is why you see grown men in Korea walking with their arms around each other's shoulders. It's why you see young women holding hands or playing with each other's hair while they talk. To a Western eye, this looks intimate or romantic. But that is only because the West has forgotten that there is a level of human connection that is deeper than romance. It is the level of the cluster. In this system, you don't give touch like you give a gift. You inhabit touch like you inhabit a warm room. Think about the rice again. If you try to pick up one single grain of rice with a pair of chopsticks, it is slippery, it is difficult, it falls away. But when the rice is sticky, when it has that Jeong, you can pick up a whole mound of it easily. The grains support each other, they cling to each other. They don't lose their shape, but they give up their loneliness so they can be part of something stronger. When we talk about healing isolation, we are talking about letting ourselves become a little bit sticky. We are talking about realizing that the steam from your bowl and the steam from my bowl are the same steam. In the West, we are so afraid of being needy. We think that if we want to be touched, it means we are weak. We think we are failing at being a sovereign. But Jeong tells us that neediness is just the natural state of a grain of rice. It is the invitation to be cooked. It is the desire to be part of the warmth. Notice how your heart rate feels right now. As we talk about this shared warmth, the firewall usually starts to relax. Why? Because Jeong isn't a threat. Jeong is a soft place to land. It is the realization that you don't have to carry the weight of your life all by yourself. You can lean, you can overlap. You can let the edges of yourself get a little bit blurry around the people you trust. This isn't a lesson in what you should do. It is just an observation of how the heat works. When you sit in the warmth of Jeong, you don't have to try to be resilient. You just are, because the group is resilient. Because the cluster doesn't break as easily as the single grain. As you look at the bowl, see the way the grains are huddled together. They aren't fighting for space. They aren't worried about their invisible bubbles. They are just resting in the heat. They are safe not because they are separate, but because they are together. Look at the bowl of rice one more time. By now, the steam has mostly vanished. The bowl is lukewarm, but the rice is still sticky. It is still a single mass. We are at the final crossroads of our journey. We have to look at the architecture of the world we have built and the world we could inhabit. This is the difference between high context and low context touch. In our modern Western-style civilization, we live in a low context world. Everything must be explained. Everything must be explicit. If you want a hug, you have to ask. If you are sad, you have to find the words to say it. We treat the human experience like a manual. Step 1, identify emotion. Step 2, verbalize need. Step 3, receive specific response. This is the logic of the dry jar. It is precise. It is clean. It keeps every grain of rice separate and accounted for. But in a high-context civilization, like the one that created the concept of skinship, the manual is written into the air. You don't have to say you are lonely if your friend is already leaning their weight against yours while you wait for the bus. You don't have to ask for a safe space if the architecture of your life is already built on constant, casual, nonverbal connection. Think about the cost of our clarity. Because we require everything to be spoken, we have turned touch into a high, load activity. Every time someone touches you in a low-context world, your brain has to do a massive amount of translation. You are trying to read a foreign language under pressure. This is why you pull away. Your brain is tired of translating. It is tired of wondering if a hand on the arm is a romantic gesture or a consolation prize or a professional boundary violation. In a high-context world, touch is low-load. It is just the background noise of being alive. It doesn't mean I love you, and it doesn't mean I want something from you. It just means we are here. It is the baseline of the nervous system. When touch is a constant, it loses its power to startle you. The firewall doesn't need to stay up because there is nothing to defend against. You aren't a sovereign nation under threat. You are just a grain of rice in a warm pot. We have traded the resilience of the group for the autonomy of the individual. In the West, we pride ourselves on being self-sufficient. We want to be the grain of rice that can stand up on its own, but a single grain of rice has no thermal mass. It loses its heat in seconds. It is easily crushed. It is brittle. True emotional resilience, the kind that gets you through a divorce, a death, or a global crisis, does not come from your internal strength alone. It comes from the social skin. It comes from the knowledge that even when your words fail, your body is still anchored to other bodies. Skinship is a biological insurance policy. It is the way a civilization ensures that no single member has to process the coldness of the world by themselves. When we look at the system level, we see that our isolation is a design choice. We design our houses with separate bedrooms and thick walls. We design our offices with cubicles and professional distances. We design our social lives around scheduled meetings and intentional conversations. We have optimized our civilization for privacy and autonomy, but our biological bodies are still running the old software that requires the cluster. This is why you feel that hollow ache even when your life is perfect. Your system is working exactly as intended, but your biology is starving. You have successfully protected your personal space, but you have accidentally deleted the shared atmosphere that makes life survivable. We are now seeing the global result of this design. We are seeing a loneliness epidemic that cannot be solved by apps or therapy alone. Why? Because you cannot talk your way out of a touch-starved nervous system. You cannot rationalize your way back into the warmth of the rice bowl. Skinship is not a technique you can learn. It is an architecture of living. It is the choice to stop treating your skin like a shield and start treating it like a bridge. It is the realization that high-context connection where the touch is the message is the only way to lower the cognitive load of being human. As you sit there with the cooling bowl of rice, consider this. The sovereignty you have worked so hard to protect is the very thing that is keeping you cold. You don't need to fix your pull-away reflex. You need to change the context of your world. You need to find a way to let the steam back in. You need to realize that being sticky isn't a loss of self. It is the only way to stay warm in a world that is increasingly frozen. Look down at the bowl. The meal is over now. The rice is gone. But if you look closely at the bottom of the ceramic, there is a single grain left behind. It is pressed against the side of the bowl, held there by a tiny bit of starch, a thin, translucent film of moisture. It is still clinging to the place where the heat used to be. This is the microscopic reality of your life. You are that grain of rice. You might be sitting in a room right now that feels very large and very quiet. You might feel the weight of your own autonomy like a heavy coat that you don't know how to take off. Think about the texture of that one grain of rice. If you touch it with your fingertip, it sticks. It doesn't ask for a reason. It doesn't demand a label. It doesn't check your identity or ask about your intentions. It just responds to the physics of connection. It is sticky because that is what it is. Your body has that same starch. Your nervous system has that same moisture. The skinship we have been talking about isn't a mountain you have to climb. It is a state of being that you have simply stepped away from. You are like a grain of rice that has rolled off the pile and onto the cold floor. You haven't lost your ability to be warm. You have just lost your contact with the heat. As you sit here, don't try to plan a new life. Don't try to force yourself to hug a stranger or break your boundaries. Just notice the places where you are already touching the world. Notice the way the air feels on the back of your neck. Notice the way your own hand feels when it rests on your knee. That tiny point of contact, the place where the fabric of your pants meets the skin of your palm, that is the beginning of the end of your isolation. It is a very small thing. It is as small as a single grain of rice, but it is real. In a few moments you will stand up, you will walk into another room, you will see another person. Maybe it is someone you love, or maybe it is just someone you pass in the hallway. Your firewall will probably be up. Your invisible bubble will be at full strength. That is okay. That is just the armor of the civilization you live in. But remember the bowl. Remember that underneath the armor, your skin is still a sensor designed for the cluster. Remember that the Jeong isn't something you have to create. It is the steam that is already rising from every human being you encounter. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to say anything. You just have to realize that the fence around your soul has a gate. And that gate is made of skin. The rice is gone, the bowl is empty, the steam has vanished into the air of the room, but the warmth is still inside the ceramic. If you put your hand against the bottom of the bowl, you can still feel it. It is faint, but it is there. You are not an island, you are just a grain of rice that has forgotten it belongs in the pot, and the pot is still warm.